Hi there, hope you're all well, and a very warm welcome back to At the Movies with Andrew, the occasional series in Matt's Movies, Music and More, whereby I, Andrew, talk about my most recent cinema trips and what I endured and enjoyed when I got there. And as we've reached the end of the year, that means we have now reached December. That most magical time of the year whereby we stuff birds under the oven and then try desperately for days on end to consume them, where Santa is apparently putting high street shops out of business by ordering all the presents from Amazon apparently, and more to the point whereby visiting grandparents get an excuse to get out the house by taking the grandchildren to a variety of colourful, fantastical and supposedly entertaining movies on offer suddenly at the cinema. And now here is a brief rundown of just a few of them. Are you all ready? I assume you are. Then let us begin. Right, my first movie this month was Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald, the sequel to 2015's Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, in itself a prequel to J.K. Rowling's world of Harry Potter, or the Wizarding World universe as we must now supposedly start calling it. Right off the bat, this is indeed part 2 of a planned 5-movie prequel series to the Harry Potter universe. And by golly, can you tell that this is part 2 of 5? It is designed purely to be a stepping stone to move the overarching series along, and ultimately it seems very little else. Yes, this is a runaround, only in New York, only in Paris instead of New York, sorry. And characters move from place to place to place to place. Sometimes they're gone for about half an hour, and then you say to yourself, oh yeah, I forgot you even existed. And all the while, the heroes accomplish very little. They find out things and they go from one place to another place, and by the end we've reached the villainous speech, we've reached the climax, only to then go, oh sorry, did you want anything to be actually accomplished or resolved today? Well, sorry, we're giving you a great big fat to be continued, and we'll see you all in the next movie 2 or 3 years from now. So yeah, this is exposition and very little else. And in that regard, I would say that as a series of prequels, J.K. Rowling is in danger of becoming the George Lucas of Harry Potter based on this movie. And by that I mean she does a lot of world building here. She adds little details and adds new pieces to the mythology to midichlorian levels, dare I say it, whereby you're going, I didn't really care to know that, or you've retconned that and I can't enjoy it anymore. Case in point, the character of Nagini. Do you remember Voldemort's snake? The big horrible monster that gobbled people up and was ultimately vital to the conclusion of the final Harry Potter story. Well, we find out in this movie that she used to be an Asian lady that got enslaved by a travelling freak show. So yeah, think of that next time you see Neville Longbottom cut the snake's head off at the end of Deathly Hallows. And this snake woman exists purely to look sad and fretful and concerned and stand by Credence's side throughout the whole movie. You could have called this character Lucy and it would have had just about as much relevance. That being said, I will say that by going into great detail in the Wizarding World here, I'd say that at least you can sort of tell that J.K. Rowling as a writer cares. there are underlying themes of love and loyalty and family ties and charismatic fascists in here if you know where to look for them. And on a similar note, David Yates is the director here. He's been the director since the 5th Harry Potter movie, so you can already tell that this is an assured, confident pair of hands here. The monsters, the increasingly less fantastic beasts on offer do look CGI magical and breathtaking. The pace is snappy and frenetic enough, and the magical spells are delivered with conviction, and with that the actors are still engaging and committed enough to this material. Eddie Redmayne as our hero Newt Scamander is still bumbling and awkward and charming, and Dan Fogel is still his fat bumbling sidekick, and Johnny Depp as the villain is no Voldemort, but he does at least manage to be sinister and compelling enough when he's required to deliver his villainous speech at the end. So with that in regard, I will give this a watch it rating. I'm not going with the consensus, popular consensus here, that as this was the lowest grossing movie of the franchise, that it has derailed it. But I will say that the wheels are starting to look a little bit squeaky here. And to paraphrase Grindelwald himself, standing on the podium, a war is coming. I feel like that something will be done by either the writer in charge or the studio to course correct this. Otherwise, I fear that by the time we get to like the 4th movie, we might reach Star Wars Episode 9 levels of does anyone even care anymore? Right, my next movie is Ralph Breaks the Internet. Open brackets, Wreck-It Ralph 2, close brackets, and you can tell from that little subtitle that this is the sequel to Disney's Wreck-It Ralph. Itself a celebration of arcade video games in that world. Only now, Ralph and his new best friend Vanellope go through the arcade's new Wi-Fi system into the magical world of the interwebs. And by doing so, it does become slightly less of a sequel or a follow-up to the original Wreck-It Ralph. And by that, I mean the supporting characters do get a bit sidelined here. They do turn up for the first 10 minutes, but after that, once we get into the internet, they do not come back until the end of the movie to say, oh yeah, we resolved our little subplot, our little problem off screen, so that's all good. But with our focus on Ralph and Vanellope, we do get a good ongoing story about friendship, potentially clingy and unhealthy, toxic relationships. And it is rather telegraphed right from the beginning with dialogue like, hey friend, let's hang out together all the time because you're my best friend and I don't want to ever leave you because we're friends and we'll be friends forever. We'll stay together forever, right? Yeah, you can sort of then tell that's what we're going to be focusing on here. And we do get to a point where we reach questions of what if a friend is enticed by a new life, and can friends stay together forever even when they're not physically there? Can friends be together all the time? And to Disney's credit, this film did go in a direction that a narrative like this normally wouldn't go. So props for that and being mature and healthy about that, even if it does kind of undermine the journey of the first movie and even breaks a couple of the rules of the first movie as a consequence. But we go into the internet and it's a virtual bustling metropolis whereby Twitter is a literal forest of blue birds chirping about cats, because that's totally how social media works. Google is a library. eBay is an auction house. You kind of get the general idea here. Yeah, this movie is essentially for the internet what Inside Out was for the mind. And by that, it presents this abstract concept as a physical world for children to grasp, and in the process teaches a couple of lessons about how the wonders and the dangers of the internet and pop culture. A good case in point, Ralph does innocuously wander into a room marked comments about him, and that did kind of touch a nerve, or I did relate to that on a rather personal level. And there's a speech about how it does bring out the worst in people, but it also brings out opportunity, which I feel is a good, well-rounded lesson for the kids to understand. And also, as well as the internet, we get pop culture, particularly Disney pop culture, that was very surprisingly irreverent and self-referential. Yes, all the princesses in the trailer turn up, and they talk about, have you ever been kidnapped or poisoned, and does your man solve all your problems for you? Do you have a song about your problems in life? And yes, Penelope does have a song about a Grand Theft Auto clone, and I did not expect Disney to go there. We're a long way from the Disney that I remember as a child, but I will say, with these references and this irreverent attitude, will this date the movie 10 years from now? All these references to brands like Google and Twitter and what have you. I suppose we just have to wait and see. But in the meantime, this is a typically solid, colourful and frenetic Disney animation with plenty of side jokes and references that in the background that do warrant repeat viewing. And on that note, I do give this a buy it. Though I will agree with the joke that Ralph Rex the Internet might have been a better name. Right, my next movie was a little expensive sci-fi fantasy book adaptation. Yes, another one of those. Called Mortal Engines. And, wait, what? No. Engines. Mortal Engines. Yeah, I know the girl in the poster looks like Katana, but yeah, sorry, you probably want one of the videos over there. Okay, sorry. Anyway, this is based on the first of a series of books by Philip Reeve. Post-apocalyptic. In the future, we've apparently after the apocalypse managed to put cities on wheels, and they roam around the landscape, and the most powerful predator city that has embraced the concept of municipal Darwinism, whatever the hell that is, we have London. Woo! Anyway, it's directed by Christian Rivers, but the name you're going to see on the poster is produced by Peter Jackson, brought to you by the people that brought you Lord of the Rings. So yeah, no pressure or anything. I mean, it looks nice. Right from the start, you've got London on wheels rolling around the Bavarian plains in IMAX-worthy visuals, and not just the exterior, the obvious care and expense that went into these CGI images, but once you get inside London and see that it's a fusion of steampunk and the London Underground and architecture and all sorts of things that make you feel, okay, a lot of love and care has gone into the set design and the visual realization of this world. I wonder what the characters and the actors are like. Oh dear. I mean, you've got Ed Sheeran, I think I've got his name right, as Tom Natesworthy, and he's there really just to be the poor man's Eddie Redmayne, to look wide-eyed and gormless and say naive things like, I wanted to be an aviator, but then my parents died, and And the villain is Thaddeus Valentine. Yes, really, that's his name. Played by Hugo Weaving, doing his melodramatic Mr. Anderson stick that we all know and love. And he's not exactly subtle about it either when, oh, that girl, thank goodness that girl has gone. She was saying all kinds of nasty, untrue things about you. What did she say? She said you murdered her mother, but I know you'd never do that, sir. Oh. Murder is such an ugly word. I'm sorry you had to hear that. You couldn't have just said she was lying or I didn't hear that. All right. But all fair play to the characters and the actors. It's not entirely their fault because the script. Oh, blimey, the script. It did make me retroactively appreciate the Crimes of Grindelwald even more, because Crimes of Grindelwald was every other word was exposition and world building, but J.K. Rowling is enough of a storyteller to make it sound lyrical and snappy and engaging for audiences. This was very much designed by robots to sound cool in the trailer, so you get exchanges like, are you sure you want to go in there? Once we go in, there's no going back. I have to, for my mother. Yeah, and also one of those characters I have to say is Anna Fang, the Han Solo type who looks like a reject out of the Matrix, and you could tell she's a badass because she's only capable of one facial expression. But yeah, every other line in this is designed to explain the background and the world of the story at the expense of any heart or warmth or intelligence. So, who are you? Where do you come from? I was raised in the Bavarian plains by the sea with my mother. Cue flashback sequence. So who was that? Who was that? That zombie rescued me and we grew up together. So do you want some orange juice? I remember the days of orange juice in the days of the 60-minute war, and yeah, this is a long movie already, about over 2 hours, but I am inclined to believe that either at the script or the film or the editing stage, this was choppily edited to just be a very basic runaround without any depth to it. I mean, the sole exception being the robot zombie. Yes, there's a robot zombie who you find out used to tinker with dolls and toys and raise the girl and cared for her in his zombie cold-hearted way and wanted to kill her and put her consciousness into a robot daughter body, and that gives you a sense of, oh, here's a character I'm interested in, and he's properly sinister, stomping around like the T-8000, and okay, maybe he's why this movie is called Mortal Engines, and I would like to see more about this character, and then he gets killed off, and the movie does come crashing down afterwards. And at that point, this just becomes, well, Star Wars, basically. You've already got the plucky young hero, and you find out London is being turned into a Death Star with a great big weapon. And, wouldn't you know it, there's a hole in St. Paul's Cathedral that the heroes have to go down in order to ultimately blow the whole thing up. But more than that, the audience I was with did groan in a couple of points. Firstly, when there was an earthquake and in the museum there's going, you have to save the lesser American god statues, and you find out that they're the minions from Despicable Me. And really, Universal, you had to go there in this post-apocalyptic fantasy? But more to the point, during the climactic fight, which I'm just going to spoil because screw this, the heroine, Hester Shaw, and Thaddeus Valentine are fighting each other on top of the airship, and Thaddeus Valentine goes, you are a survivor. You never give up. You're just like me. Your mother never told you, did she? The Empire Strikes Back was such a long time ago, wasn't it? So yeah, to wrap this up, yes, it's beautiful looking, but it's such a bog standard story of cliche and running around and explaining things to each other gormlessly that I have to say, forget it. Nobody is gonna remember this. But to its credit, unlike other book adaptations, it knows when to quit. It did not end on a big cliffhanger that's just embarrassing. The two heroes are sitting on the airship and they're flying off. Where are we going to go next? Wherever the wind takes us. Okay. You have fun with that. My next movie was Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, brought to us by Sony Pictures Animation, who previously have done the Emoji Movie. And what, don't touch that button, don't touch that button, don't touch that button! I know I've done this joke before, and I know my face is uncomfortably close right now, but don't, please, it's not the Emoji Movie. It really isn't. I know it was horrible. It was written by old men who don't know how the internet works. I know it won a lot of Razzies. I know they allegedly cancelled doing a new Popeye movie in order to do it, but it's not the Emoji Movie. It's done by the same guys who did the Lego Movie. Okay, you're interested. All right. Okay, we can go something here. We can do something, okay? Good. I've got your interest again. Thank you. Yes, this is written, or at least produced, by Phil Lord and Chris Miller. And this is not the story of not just good old Peter Parker as Spider-Man, but also Miles Morales, the ultimate Spider-Man who started back in 2011, but also a variety of different Spider people from different mainstream media and continuities and universes. It's getting increasingly difficult to appreciate for younger generations, but this is a very interesting and unique time to be a comic book fan. Just imagine 10 years ago, with Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy, the idea that a man dressed as a bat and a clown fighting each other could be a serious crime drama. That was interesting enough, unbelievable enough. But around the same time, Marvel could take Thor and Iron Man and Captain America. Believe it or not, children, back in 2008, nobody knew outside the comic book world. Nobody cared or knew who these characters are. But look where we are now. You're dressing up as them based on movies that respected and adapted their mythology and character into accessible entertainment. I did feel a frisson of that with this movie, which raised eyebrows back when it was announced. An animated Spider-Man movie. And not just that, Matt, I hope he doesn't mind if I mention this, he was struggling to understandably wrap his head around the concept of this movie with all these different spider men and women, but more importantly, he was saying to me, but I don't quite get this, that there's a black Spider-Man? Yes, there is. You can probably tell from that I have a bit of a personal bias here. I mean, I've collected and enjoyed those books, but I can report as a reader of that material that this shame it's not live action, but it has captured all the important key points of the Miles Morales origin story of who he is and how he came to be Spider-Man. He's a popular student, unlike Peter Parker, but he's been enrolled into an academy. He has a stern policeman father. He has a charismatic but shady criminal uncle. He gets bit by a spider, but he's initially reluctant to be a hero and put himself in danger. But when his world's Spider-Man dies shortly afterwards, he feels an overwhelming sense of responsibility and obligation to finish what he started, i.e. stop the big particle accelerator thingy that's threatening to destroy New York. And because he dipped his toe in it for like 5 seconds or something, we've now got other spider people coming through, including a fat, depressed, divorced hobo Peter Parker, who's proves to be quite not only an interesting take on the character, but also, yes, he's schlubby and they make jokes about that, but he proves to be quite a snappy and sympathetic mentor figure to Miles Morales. You've got Gwen Stacy, Spider-Woman, who proves to be a good enough hero in her own right and a suitable foil for Peter Parker and Miles Morales. And with these 3 characters, perhaps the other spider people we get introduced to, Japanese anime Spider-Girl, black and white 30s detective Spider-Man who can't grasp what colour is, and Looney Tunes Spider-Pig do get a little bit sidelined in comparison. They're kind of there to be jokes, but they are, like I said with the colour and Looney Tunes thing, they are very good jokes. And it is saying, isn't it saying something that you've got a Looney Tunes Spider-Man pig, talking pig, and he does not debase or devalue this movie. He's actually quite heroic as well. So yeah, this definitely story-wise hits all the correct emotional and comedic beats of a Spider-Man story. The humour and the emotional baggage of what it means to be Spider-Man done in a way that we haven't seen before. Whilst with all these people, Miles Morales, his journey and ultimately becoming a hero are at the centre of this film. And more than that, the animation style that this is presented in is very visually distinctive. It's a pleasing combination of pop art and graffiti and comic book panels done in a very inventive way. I mean, to use the cliche, it looks like a comic book, but yeah, it does look like a comic book without putting a camera in front of you and showing comic book panels. So yeah, it's distinctive, and in a world of Pixar and Disney and DreamWorks and Illumination, it manages to be very striking and original. So ultimately, yeah, this is without being another flipping Peter Parker origin story, this is the best Spider-Man movie. Most accomplished Spider-Man movie since Spider-Man 2 way back in 2004, and I have to do it. I have to, first time in this series, give this movie a big fat whopping top of the tree cherish it. Yes, it's an animated movie, but it's a very welcome addition to what has been a very strong year of superhero movies, and please do check this out. Right, my last movie of the month, my last movie of the whole year of 2018, because I could not follow tradition and go and see a Star Wars movie, although I don't really think the young Han Solo movie would have done much better at it being released now, to be quite frank, was Mary Poppins Returns. Directed by Rob Marshall. You can tell that this is a sequel, a long-belated and long-awaited sequel to the Disney classic Mary Poppins. Basically, did you enjoy the singing and the dancing and the cartoons and the sentimental journey and message of Mary Poppins? Well, here it is again. Once again, Mary Poppins comes to the Banks family to not only look after the Banks children many years later, but to also help the father, who is Mike, a grown-up Michael, grown up like his father is, initially has a dismissive and cynical adult view of, oh, you're filling the children's heads with stuff and nonsense, but eventually his heart warms. Again, the bank proves to be a threat, except we've now got an actual antagonist, and a ticking clock, and a solution that was right under our noses the whole time. And just when you think the resolution is going to go a certain way, 92-year-old Dick Van Dyke shows up and dances for 10 seconds, and then he can't handle it anymore. Again, we have a side character who's a labourer with a dubious Cockney accent. I mean, Lin-Manuel Miranda is better than Dick Van Dyke in that regard, although that's not really saying much, let's be honest. And again, we have a gravitationally challenged relative who we have a song with. And again, there are magical dream sequences, there's singing, there's dancing, and there's 2D animation, which in this day and age is very welcome. Thank you very much. I would say supercalifragilisticexpialidocious again, except I can't remember them actually saying that throughout this whole movie. That being said, Emily Blunt does a solid job as Mary Poppins. She's not as bright and cheerful as Julie Andrews was, but she's more of a stern and caustic Dowager Duchess, but she acquitted herself well enough. Supporting actors do a fine job. The songs, I don't feel right now will be as memorable as or catchy as, say, Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious or Chim Chimney Chiroo. But I was talking with a colleague about this, and he did say it's been 54 years for the original songs to grow on you. Give this a chance, and maybe he has a point. Trip a Little Light Fantastic and Where the Lost Plate Things Go are well-meaning enough. So yeah, this is bright, this is colourful, it's family pleasing, it's exactly what Disney needed to release around the Christmas period. Is it as good as the original? Well, I wouldn't quite go that far, but it's pleasant and entertaining enough and barely earns a watch it from me. Oh, and at the end, they fly off on levitation instead of kites, it's balloons, but they all fly off on levitation devices again. I'll stop that now. Right, and that is the end of the month. If you're not hungover from Christmas Day, you'll be hungover from New Year's Eve soon enough. And in the spirit of Christmas, I'm not going to give a recommendation or a condemnation of any one thing. You might feel that's a cop-out, but I do genuinely feel that with Crimes of Grindelwald, I went to see it with a colleague who's a big, cheerful Harry Potter fan in a tiny cinema underneath Canary Wharf. I saw Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse with a huge packed crowd of young Spider-Man fans. I saw Mary Poppins with a big family audience on Boxing Day. And it's stuff like this that I want to say that throughout this festive period I've had a range of interesting cinematic experiences, and there are enough movies that are all entertaining enough in their own way for you to peruse. But if you've seen all the ratings, then maybe you can see I recommend some more than others, but it's Christmas, give peace a chance and all that, and be good to your loved ones and all that stuff. Right, next time I will look over 2018 and what I enjoyed and did not enjoy with my best and worst lists. I hope you'll come back for that. But in the meantime, thank you for watching, and please remember to stay tuned and maybe hopefully subscribe to Matt's Movies, Music and More. I'm Andrew. Have a good day. Peace out.